Ask one of them what would happen if two of them. All right, it is 5 o'clock, and so we're going to go ahead and get started with our work session for City Council. I'm not sure whether in the that's what happens when I'm not here to. You're fine. Tonight I'm trying to get to my email. No, you're good. 5 o'clock sneaks up on you. 5 o'clock somewhere. 5 o'clock somewhere. All right, this is a scheduled work session with the City Council. It is a public meeting. We're glad that Mrs. Larson is here to represent all of Brigham City. Actually, we were hoping that more would be here to help her represent Brigham City. But tonight we're talking about utility rates. And was that the only thing? And maybe some personnel. Okay. That's what was requested. Well, utility rates was requested by City Council, and then I think we're going to see how far that goes. Maybe get some personnel. Being a work session, the budget was turned over to the City Council, and Councilmember Smith is a Mayor Pro Tem, and so I will turn the remainder of the work session over to Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just welcome everybody again, and I'm ready to rip. All right, we're getting there. All right, here we go. Yeah, the closed captioning turned off, hopefully. All right, so a lot of this, the council we've talked about previously, but understanding and realizing, hey, people in attendance or those who may watch this presentation later on may not have the background of exactly what Brigham City is as far as utilities that we own and operate, why we do what we do. So kind of these first slides are kind of just to break it through it. Really, so Brigham City owns and operates, Brigham City Corp owns and operates various utilities that provide services to its citizens. The main goal there is that we are very customer focused. We want to deliver these services to our residents. We want to provide good service at a fair and competitive price. And one of the things we'll talk about through all this, though, is really the ownership is the community. It's the citizens. The decision-making is made by locally elected officials. Citizens that are really the owners of that entity, of the utility, elected you, to go and make the decisions to run that utility for them. The big difference that I like to point out is, unlike investor-owned utilities, which prioritize shareholder profits, municipal utilities are mission-driven, serve the public interest. A lot of times, when I talk with people, I talk about, okay, we were a normal, I shouldn't say normal, but we were an investor-owned utility, maybe a large one that's here in the state that many are familiar with, Rocky Mountain Power. You know, if you're a shareholder, then a dividend is paid out to you. In that case, one of the larger shareholders, owners, it would be Berkshire Hathaway. So the dividend is paid to them. As in Brigham City's case, where we are the shareholders, the residents are the shareholders, those dividends take place kind of in the transfer. One of the transfer that people talk about, we're transferring that money back to be used in the community, whether it's for public safety, parks, things that the mayor talked about during his budget presentation that really make Brigham City a community, a place where people want to live. That's what we're doing with that money that is generated, made inside those utilities. And also, as the council is very aware, and we are also investing heavily back into our utilities, making improvements. We want them to be good. We want them to operate correctly, not have issues, deliver the product, provide the service. Like I said, we are customer focused, and we want those rates to be affordable. Why? Why do we do this? Really, it does provide strategic advantages to the city. It allows us to have local control and accountability. You guys are the ones that make the decisions for Brigham City and the utilities that we own. We're allowed, as we talked about here, we're allowed to reinvest that revenue into our own city. Our residents see that benefit. There is an economic development lever to this as well. We are meeting and talking with companies that would like to relocate here, or even as residential growth is taking place. Having these locally managed utilities allows us to, it's an attraction to them, and it helps retain. And it does help support job growth and economic stability here in the city. And again, really, so okay, what utilities does the city participate in? Inside we have two funds that are really enterprise funds that run separately, different than like a normal governmental fund. If you want to get into more of the nerd accounting of it, talk to Councilmember Jensen. Would love to go into that. But really, these are the ones. So inside our utility fund, you'll hear us talk a lot about, it's the electric, garbage collection, sewer, water. In the storm drain fund, shockingly enough, where storm drain is. So those are kind of what's there. And so as we get into the rates, so I figured the first rate we would talk about is our utility rate for electricity inside the utility fund. Back in 2022, 3 years ago, Dave Berg presented a plan. So Dave Berg is the rate consultant that the city had a contract with at that time. He comes in, he does like a cost of service, looks at everything happening inside the electric department. 3 years ago, he came and he gave a 4-year plan. And so I have put down below, on this slide, it shows the residential plan that Mr. Berg proposed at that time. So if you go back and look at fiscal year 2022, you can see these were these are the rates that the city had at that time. And for those of you that weren't on the council at this time, we also did a rate study for water, for sewer, and different items, and Jones and Associates helps with that rate study. In that rate study, when Jones and Associates came back, much like Mr. Berg came back, Mr. Berg came back with the 2026 rate. He kind of said, this is where you guys need to be. But he also proposed to the council, I understand that is a drastic jump due in 1 year. So he laid out a plan for 4 years to say, all right, here's the incremental steps we're going to take to get you to where I feel you should be now, but I understand what that means. I understand the change that would be to your customers. So this year that we're going into, fiscal year 2026, is the last year of Mr. Burke's rate study that was done 3 years ago. So you can look in there, you can see, so the dollar change and the percent change that's on the right side, that's comparing to 2022. So this is how far the city has moved over the last 5 fiscal years. So the numbers that are showing in fiscal year 2026 were the numbers that were presented in the mayor's budget. So yeah, overall, you can see where it is happening there. And the important part also that was presented to the city, to the council back in 2022, was the concept of a power purchase adjustment clause. It had not been in our rate structure before. Mr. Burke presented it as, that's the PPAC. And you can look on the bottom there, this part is fascinating. Well, not fascinating. Man, how I wish that was what had happened. But the PPAC is designed, so inside our rate structure, we have a part of our rate that is dedicated to the wholesale purchase of power. So the PPAC, what it does is it goes and adjusts for what really transpires. There's 2 parts of the PPAC. One's a look-back rate that says, okay, you anticipated, your rate has in there $66 per megawatt. That's what is built into our rate. That's what we anticipate to do. At the end of the year or look-back period, however long we decide to do it, when we first implemented the PPAC, it was designed to be a year look-back. As the council is very aware of, that's not what happened. Because of what happened inside the wholesale power market, we had to move quicker and do things. But the PPAC is designed to look back and say, all right, for the previous year, you actually spent $70 on wholesale power. You undercharged your customer. So the look back part says, okay, we're going to do that adjustment. We're going to now put in additional, you can put in additional rate to go and collect the correct amount. And there's also a look forward part. It says, hey, Brigham City, your rate has built in $66. Do you think that's what's going to happen in the future? Or do you feel it's going to be more like 72, 85, 46? So that part you can adjust in there too. So that's how the PPAC was designed to work, how it should work. So over the past couple of years, Brigham City has had a PPAC charge in its utility bill. We started as high as when the train really took off from the station. When we first had to implement the PPAC, it was 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. In our current budget we're in, it's at 1.25 cents kilowatt hour. And in the budget that is being proposed by Mayor Mott, it is to 0 for the fiscal year 2026. So what does that mean? What does that mean for a typical home? Full disclosure. Well, this is the rate thing. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. So these are the proposed rates. So the old rate is what we're currently charging customers for residential. The new rate is what we're going to move to. And on the bottom, I wanted to put in the impact of the PPAC. So really, if you look at those May through September plus PPAC, or the October, April with the PPAC, because of the budget that's being proposed by the mayor, the PPAC going to 0, if things were to stay the same, well, the rate is a decrease because there is no more PPAC, the overall rate.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Quick question on that one. The first 400 kilowatts, how did we come up with 400 kind of as a gauge? Is that about what the average home uses, or where did we, is it just arbitrary? Did we decide it? That beforehand.
I am not 100% positive why that breakdown exists.
Always.
It's
I like long distance used to be. After 9 p.m. somehow the lines got cheaper.
Yeah, the way I
part of it too is, because even then, like, it's a very industry standard type of thing too. Like,
could it be based on our power purchase agreements?
No.
it really all it is an average usage. It's kind of a baseline across all residential customers.
Okay.
And those things can be adjusted. It's just
And, you know, actually, I believe it obviously used to be different. And it really is just essentially what Dave Bird does is said, okay, here's the average usage among all residential customers. And most people are going to use from 0 to 400. And that from 0 to 400 monthly is essentially this bucket. And we need this amount of revenue to collect this bucket. And that's just an average. So really, it's really just statistical analysis of the usage within our system. What's probably intriguing about your question for me is we continue, and in the mayor's proposed budget, we have another rate study budgeted to continue this into step 2. It'll be interesting to me to see what Dave Bird comes back with in regards to this, because for many, many years, load growth was actually declining with more efficient lighting, more efficient appliances. We've seen a change to that over the last about 4 or 5 years. So load growth, you know, you've seen it all the way across America. Everybody's thinking we're going to start doing this with load. That is not what's happening in reality, and we've seen a huge tick up of that over the past 5 years. So I would assume Dave's going to suggest a change to us in that for KW based on the data that we're seeing actually in the customers of Brigham City going forward. Obviously, we're not doing that in the current year or the upcoming budget, but yeah, it's really just statistical analysis of expenses, revenues, and what folks are actually using.
So Dave Bird came up with 400.
Yes.
And if the load growth changes, you're saying that would mathematically, the rate would increase to the next tier sooner. It'd probably be like 350 or something.
Yeah, actually what it would probably look like, and from what I'm assuming, it might say the first 600 is worth this instead of the first 400, because everybody on average is using
Right, but
600.
then the rate would be higher.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Now, obviously, Matt, you're asking questions about a tiered structure. We are seeing different structures, just 100% honest with you, because of EVs, electric charging, and we are absolutely going to look at that and what that looks like to Brigham City as time goes on. So later on this year, probably December, January timeframe, when Dave presents, it might be next spring, presents what he thinks we ought to be doing in the future, we may see some suggestions away from a tiered structure and some different methodologies that we're seeing across America. And actually, 2 local municipalities just adopted that here in Utah. So
then I went and looked and said, all right, for a home, what does that mean? So over the last 12 months, the usage in this home, which is very similar to the home that I live in, it may be my home. I just went and looked and saying, what does it mean? Over the course of a year, if my usage were to stay the same, all things held equal, if the rates that are being proposed in Mayor Bott's budget had been the rates that were in place for the last 12 months, I would have paid $66 less than what I did. So it kind of gives you an idea of where we're headed. Also, what I did, I went and compared to a Rocky Mountain bill. Rocky Mountain has new rates that will be in effect. They are in effect as of April 25th. So I went and said, all right, if there are 1,000 kilowatt hours that are used inside a home, if that's what billed, what would it look like for Rocky Mountain Power? And then what would it look like for a Brigham City resident? So the Rocky Mountain Power, I had to wade through their bill a little bit. So if I understood correctly, and all of their rate tier structures and all their different rates that exist, in a home, so Rocky Mountain has a customer charge of $12. Those numbers are flipped. Currently it's 10, it's moving to 12. Their energy rates are shown there. Inside their rate structure, they also have an energy balancing account. That is our PPAC. They have a customer efficiency service. They have a wildfire mitigation balancing account. They have electric vehicle infrastructure. They have all these different fees inside their rate structures. I feel comfortable, I understood what they were doing. Bottom line is, one of their customers for 1,000 kilowatt hours would pay around $146. Right now, with our current rate structure, even with the P-PAC, our resident would pay $148.45. There's a $2 difference. Inside Mayor Bott's proposed rates, they're going to see a $4 to $5 difference. So again, if we look back and say, hey, municipal utility-owned utility company, what's our goal again? Is to provide a great service to our customers at a competitive rate. I feel what's being proposed is a very competitive rate by Mayor Bott. We can actually see that for those kilowatt hours used, budgeted, we are less than what a Rocky Mountain Power customer would pay. So then we go into the commercial and industry rate structures. As Mr. Euler alluded to, inside these ones, it now becomes a demand concept. And if you're wanting to know more about demand and how that works, I would invite you to have Mr. Cooper come up and talk to you about all the fun that happens there. But you can see again, over 4 or 5 years, Mr. Berg came and met with us. Really, I go back to the point of the 2026 is where Mr. Berg wanted to move on day one. This is what your rates really should be. He understood the drastic change that was going to be. We implemented that plan to get to where we needed to be. That's there. Really, it's like, okay, so where does the money come from? I didn't know how you guys wanted to look at it. If you wanted to look at it by years or by the type of revenue stream we have, so I gave you both. So pick your poison. You can see in the top left slide, talks about electric sales residential. And it's showing the fiscal years, the budgeted amounts that we anticipated to receive. So you can see all of them kind of just growing, except in the industrial side. There has been a bump down there where we're seeing industrial customers, the revenue coming from additional customers has been stepping down. The customer service fee, again, it's all part of the plan. P-PAC, I'm so glad there's not a purple line up there for year 26. It's good stuff. And then you can look, hey, by fiscal years, where does our money actually budgeted to come from? So this is the fun one, not the fun one. This is the chart you guys have seen a lot. You see it monthly in an email from me, talking about our rate stabilization fund and the P-PAC. So at the end of March, we had $6.6 million inside of the rate stabilization. A couple months ago, we worked with the council on the rate stabilization fund policies. It was approved by the council. So at that time, we set a 120-day reserve for the rate stabilization. We go back, look at our most recent audited financials, look at the electric department. All right, how much of cash do you need to survive 120 days? To operate, I shouldn't say survive, but to operate. 5.6 million. So that is the threshold for the rate stabilization. I put right in there. The policy that was adopted by the council clearly states that the power rate stabilization fund balance is at or above the target level. P-PAC will not be charged. That's exactly what we're doing. The P-PAC is off. I keep saying it over and over. It's a good thing. We're excited that it's going away. I just want to put in there the caveat. The understanding is there are conditions that would bring the P-PAC, but we're not anticipating those. But it would be, hey, there's been so many consecutive months that we're over the previous year's wholesale cost. We've dipped below a certain threshold inside the rate stabilization fund. If those conditions are met during the fiscal year, you'll be hearing from me to talk about a P-PAC, but not the anticipated outcome. And then this shows, hey, where's Brigham City getting its power? Where is our portfolio mix from? So again, I know the council understands this a lot, but if someone were to go and listen to this, they need help falling asleep at night and they want to cue this up. Important for them to understand, I hear a lot. in my office, on phone calls, or even talking to neighbors, friends, family, that Brigham City is getting its power from Rocky Mountain. That is not true. We receive the power. Rocky Mountains, we use their transmission lines, but it's sent to us. I was like, that's not the trick. Delivered to us through that Rocky Mountain lines. However, we're receiving it through many different projects, sourcing. So in there, we talk about the CRSP is the Colorado River Storage Project. Brigham City's received power from there, even when we were receiving power from Rocky Mountain. We had a contract not long time ago, 12 years ago, that's where we were getting power. We were wholesaling from Rocky Mountain. Back then, the rates of that contract were being proposed to change. At that time, the council felt like that wasn't beneficial, so we moved to the Utah Association of Municipal Power Systems, UAMPS, is where we went. However, we still kept our crisp allocation. We continue to receive power from the Colorado River Storage. And there, the orange line you also see is called the pool, the market. That's for when we don't have a contract. We don't have any other energy coming and we need to go buy it. That is what it is. So you can see how that orange part used to make up a large part of our portfolio, anywhere from 20 to 30% historically. When things hit the fan in those fiscal years, the decision was made by the council of, hey, tighten that up. We don't like that exposure. We don't like that risk. And that's what the majority of municipal-owned utility companies did as well. Then we went and got more, so PX is contracts. We went and entered into more contracts. And UAMPS helps us get those contracts off the market. No, I said market, so don't get it too confused. So the contract is we say we need this amount of energy at these times of day. And they group usually all of like the UAMPS members who are interested in going out and finding a contract, a forward contract. They go out and find, hey, this is what is being proposed by UAMPS. We have customers that want this. Is there anyone out there that can provide this to them at this cost? They do put a not to exceed cost inside those things. Comes back, we sign it, or we don't sign it, and away we go. The point of that is you can see clearly that Brigham City has made the effort to get more forward contract pricing. Just making the council aware of this. You've heard ad nauseum from myself, from Mr. Cooper, from UAMPS. Those contracts are going away. The contract that's going away, a lot of times you'll refer to it as our shell contract. It was locked in we got like a year and a half left, 2 years maybe, I can't remember. So, and the pricing inside that contract is great, really good. So we're continuing to kick the tires, kick the bushes, trying towards looking. We are very aware of that contract's termination, so we're looking hard to find how to replace that. So, and then you can see the other products we have. Horse Butte, the wind farm up in Idaho, we draw some from. Sunnyside is a project that we're participating in for a short term. It's just the waste coal. I couldn't think of the correct term. Waste coal, and then IPP. We had some callback. Some of those members that participate in that huge plant sends a lot of power over to California. There's a provision in there they could call back some of that power. We took advantage of it. That is also coming. You can see it makes up an itsy-bitsy part of our portfolio. So really that was the power side of things, the electric side. And then the only other change that is in the mayor's budget is dealing with the blue cans. So the blue cans are recycled. We completely outsource this program. Mono Waste handles it for Brigham City. They deliver the cans, they pick up the cans. The part where Brigham City gets involved is we handle the billing. Obviously, we bill our residents if they have a blue can. We're paying Econo Waste. And so you can see at the top lines, depends where you want to start. Let's start actually in the middle. So in 2018, when the program was initiated, when it was started, that's how many of our customers signed up for a blue can. And you can see it has been decreasing every year since then. So we anticipate in 2026, if the trend were to continue, to lose another 3% of our customers who want blue cans. But what we're seeing on the flip side, so if you look at the chart up above, the tipping fees that Econo-Waste is charging us are growing. A couple of reasons for that. One is the cost of fuel that Econo-Waste is using. It's in their contract. They'll come back and charge us more. And the other part also is there's been an increase in contaminated recyclables. They take them back to their facility or to the recycling facility. They can't recycle them, so now they have to go landfill them because they're contaminated. And so we get charged for that when they have to dispose of them. So last year there was an $18,000 loss. This year we're forecasting a $12,000 loss. And so in the mayor's budget, we are flat out just proposing an increase to cover the cost of the program. If the residents feel they want to participate in this, the new cost for the can would be $9.50, a 23% increase. I fully anticipate if that were to happen, we actually may see a greater drop-off. Forecasted here. The other question that would be the council's decision to make is when people get a blue can, they are locked in for a year. So their rate would change. We would tell them, you have it for a year. If the council wanted to change that, it would be a change we'd need to make in policy that the council would need to move on. But with that, that's really kind of what I had as far as the changes in utility rates that were inside the mayor's proposed budget. So with that, questions, comments, things you want to revisit?
Maybe just real quick comment on our blue cans. As we've continued to see a decrease in the participation in blue cans, we've continued to see a little bit of an increase in the discussion with the third-party contractors taking care of it. And, you know, I'm not making this as a blanket statement, but we may get to a point with our third-party contractor that there are just not enough takers economically feasible for them to continue this service within our corporate limits without some sort of longer term contract. And to be honest with you, that longer term contract is going to come with risk, financial risk to the city. So it's essentially, you know, they're looking for a long term contract at a certain dollar amount, no matter how many customers are using the service or not. So we may, you know, as we continue to negotiate that with the third-party contractor, just really providing council awareness that we may be coming back shortly for a conversation of what this looks like long term, and may face some difficult decisions, frankly, on what the longevity of our recycling program looks like versus, you know, obviously multiple options. Does, you know, Brigham City Corporation decide to take care of some of it, or, you know, lots of options on the table, but there are some unknowns and a little bit of change that are going to continue to cause us some consternation as we talk about this subject in the future. So.
With so in the budget we have a 12% transfer.
Correct.
Right. What do you have that number? I looked it up, but
let me hit this. I have it open today. It should be right here. All right, so the transfer that is coming to the general fund $4.3 million from the utility fund and $35,000 from storm drain.
with that, well, 5%, what? That number changed too, if I.
If we moved it to 12.5%, it would go to 4.5 million. Ish.
So if something like that were to happen, what does that do inside of our utility?
Whatever that delta is between the two numbers, so we got 4.5 and I said 4.3 at first, right? But $200,000 that would need to come from a capital project inside the utility. That's what, yeah. Yep. Would be my recommendation. Let me rephrase that. The better.
And then, probably more change, like, people get confused with it. Going to that is that goes to all of the utilities. That is correct me if I'm wrong, that's a basic, that's
O&M.
That's your base electric. Only electric, or is that?
No, that's what pays for your infrastructure and.
Right, but I'm saying,
Electricity only,
But
yes.
but it goes to just the electric.
Yeah,
not
just
the
the
electric.
yeah.
So instead of having it be 30, that's what it is. I don't know what RMP calls
They call it a
it, basic charge or something.
depend on their rates. Yeah, so when on the bills I've seen, some of I see it as a basic charge. On their rate schedule, I found online it's called a customer charge. But what it actually says in their bill, and yeah, in talking with people that do have Rocky Mountain Power, I see basic charge.
I don't know if that bothers.
And then the difference between transfer and our utility rate. What's the money? Is it specifically going to?
Yeah, so I think there is continual talk about it. I don't know how many years that the customer charge has been labeled as that to the city. In talking with some of my staff, they expressed some concern about changing the name because, well, hey, we've trained people now. Majority of people understand what it is. If we are to change it, then we're going back to the process we did whenever it was changed. But no one's opposed to it. Like, hey, not really what you want, whether it's electric, customer charge, but really just think of it. I explain it to someone as if you never were to turn the lights on side of your home. That is the cost it takes Brigham City to have things available to you to flow the energy.
Snap a meter on your whatever it is. That's what you're going to pay, even if you don't use it.
Yeah. So, as I've talked to other people, it's kind of in the water world. This is what it costs, regardless of your usage or not. This is what it is. Brigham City can provide it to you, have it available for you to use. Sure. So, yeah, I do.
When we're raising that, what is our expectation for raising?
That's the cost of the system.
The infrastructure, the wire, the electricity.
And honestly, it includes personnel. So our employees, it's really, I would call it the fixed cost of operating an electrical grid. So it's, doesn't matter whether you use it or don't use it.
12%, or is that separate
The utility.
to the revenue?
Your question is the customer service fee included in the total revenue that is calculated in the transfer to the general fund? Is that the question?
That's how I see it, that it's kind of like in there as the total revenue. And then
I did your job for quite a few years, and I actually don't know the answer. You're gonna have to look that up in the budget. If we include the customer service fee revenue in the transfer,
It is not.
there's your answer.
So that stays with the,
Yeah, so what is calculated off the transfer for the electric portion? It is the commercial, industrial, and residential revenues.
the rate.
Good question.
It does hit, so the customer service fee hits a different general ledger revenue line. So it's on its separate line. So if you look in the budget, there's a separate line item, revenue line for customer service fee that comes from residential and commercial. And then obviously Tom's looked that up, and it's not included in the 12% transfer to the general fund.
Sorry, I thought I hit stop sharing, I guess, somehow. That's how I'm able to do these cool-looking charts. So what Mr. Euler was talking about is they are separate GL lines, so I can pull in exactly what happened there. So this is your customer service fee over the last 4 years. And again, just to restate what we talked about with Councilmember Troxel, is that customer service fee is not included in the transfer calculation. You can see for the upcoming fiscal year 26, we're anticipating, we budgeted, so that means we're anticipating it, $1 million.
First, we change home and, well, commercial building,
Yeah.
work with that.
Yeah, so you can see on here, so really quick, here's the residential change. So you can see it's doubled from where we started with Mr. Berg. And then to Ryan's point on the commercial, again, we're in that little over double. We started there with around 13, depending where you are. If you have demand or no demand in your business, it's either going to be 30 or 22 bucks.
I think, my thing was, that goes to our electric, so
Yeah,
it comes on your utility bill, and I think it's the first line.
and we had that discussion briefly today with staff, a little bit of like, and again, I said, we're not opposed. We think it probably is needed to clarify, hey, this is an electric only charge. It doesn't apply to the water, your garbage, fee rate that is associated solely for you.
One staff member that's been here for a really long time says she's seen it change probably 3 times.
Yeah, that was,
Called it a cyclical title.
she goes, these things are all, she's like, it's
Well, what
funny.
was it before then? Let's maybe bring something back.
Oh, she said it, it's funny because all things cyclical, like,
Yeah.
it used to be just all rolled in for electric.
It wasn't broke out.
It wasn't
People
broke
wanted
out. And then it was like, hey, we want to
Then
break
had to
this
give it
out.
a name.
Then it was kind of like full disclosure. My understanding was, well, what does Rocky Mountain call it? Well, it's something similar. But without your point, though, is spot on. I did it anyway. Rocky Mountain's an electric company, so people understand.
Right. It's
my
my
electric-
utility, right.
Yeah.
You get an electric bill
Or
from
where
We
Rocky
have a water customer.
Yeah, it's in their base rate.
Not a separate customer
Not a separate
service.
customer. Yeah,
Very
that's
separate.
good clarification.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could put the word electric or power in front of it if the council wanted to. Too much more words on the bill, but yeah, I mean, we can put a name in front
You
of
can
it, but,
clarify.
not sure it changes a whole lot because really the question we get is, what is this for?
Right.
And the name in front of it doesn't necessarily, even if you put the name electrical or power, it doesn't change the question as what is this for?
This for?
I do want to state one thing, make sure the council's aware. The Tom's showing in the 2026 budget, there's budgeted to be $1 million worth of revenue from this. And my previous statement was that's to cover the fixed costs. The fixed costs of the power department are much more than $1 million. So make it very clear that $1 million does not cover the entire fixed cost of the power department. So this number is obviously a percentage of the fixed costs
Right.
to run the power department. So
Our other departments don't get the same. The water department doesn't get it.
it's baked. So just like Tom said, it's just baked into the rate. So there's in water, there's a base rate, whether you use a drop of water or you don't use a drop of water.
1,000 gallons.
Yep. So it's baked in to that rate. And the customer service fee for electricity used to be baked into that first tier for power.
I could be wrong, but I think I remember this, maybe my first or
Two-
second year on council. That
2012 or 13 is
Yeah,
when we
so
broke it out separate.
And it was
So-
the reason or the rationale behind it was customer transparency. Wondering what's in my rate.
Oh, I mean, I didn't know if I was going to help anybody out there or not. If you,
We could try it. We might create more questions than answers.
you might. That's very. It was just
What is this for? Just flat out, what is this charge for?
Storm drain. A lot of people ask what is storm drain for. And I said, we have it's often. We have public hearings, I tell them.
Which channel are you talking about too? Because on the rumor mill, social media, it's how much does the mayor get of the, probably the most common question.
No, I would say by far, probably the most common question is, what is the customer service? What is it? Yeah, a lot of time, people also ask like, landfill fee. If I were to think, okay, if I were to tick them off, customer service fee is number one. Storm drain's probably number two. Well, PPAC's number two. Maybe number one actually right now. Well, it had been. Like it's all depending on what's happening with people's bills. So.
Dave, move your microphone down to your, there you go, sorry.
or stand. If that would be helpful for folks, if it's a real issue, if it's just a small percent and it's not necessary, but if you thought this is an ongoing discussion, maybe a definition of terms at the beginning of the cycle, fiscal year, something to think about.
It's a good idea. I like it.
And then identify it, say this is what it means in the simplest terms.
Yeah, I like it.
Then you have a reference to go back when they call, say, well, we did send that out, and we made that information available to you, and then articulate what that is again, repeating it. But adding electrical to the name might be helpful, but I just think, my wife just tells me what I spent, and I don't have any idea where it all falls into what category.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
I like it. Yeah. You can always do better at helping educate. Like it's on our website. If people wanted to go and click on it and go, hey, these are what things mean. But
Eric, you mentioned how it does cost more than the basic. So the rate could logically be a $25.35.
I would not dare make an
Or
assessment, but if I was to take a guess, if we were just to cover regular O&M, operation and maintenance, no capital projects, you're probably north of $50 a month. So, and obviously, when you start thinking about what makes that up, employees is probably the biggest single dollar amount, but maintenance of our substations, our fleet, our vehicles, our equipment, everything associated with it. And there's not. Rob, you asked an interesting question. Why did we ever break it out? I think, honestly, the answer for me is because Rocky Mountain Power broke it out. That's what we see. And, I think that conversation, that question, we could definitely ask Dave Berg as we start our new power study for, you know, the next foreseeable future, and talk to them about that and say, hey, do we need to continue to break this out? Is there a better way to do it? What are you seeing across the country? This is what everybody does. I think we can voice those questions, and yeah, it does not cover fixed cost, not even close. So,
And I seem to remember, when you mentioned it, that he did the first study, he recommended the $10 service charge kind of right away.
Yeah, he
And-
said this is what your needs to be, but then
And then- and to go up
typically
from
the
there.
council's political will is to jump to that.
I was kind of remembering it being $10 immediately,
Mhm.
and then kind of going up, and it almost went up to like around within 10.
I actually think the mayor put the first $10 in his budget, and the council cut it back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, any other, I'm sorry. It's getting there, man, give me a second.
Councilmember Smith, I would love 5 minutes to talk about fire department personnel, seeing if you would allow me to before we're out of here.
We got time.
Are we? But if I don't want to interrupt utility questions either.
Yeah,
So,
anybody else have any other utility questions?
Are we looking at, needing to expand personnel in our utilities?
there are no new personnel changes in the mayor's budget in our utility funds. There are many requests. There was 12 new full-time employee requests from the department heads in the budget. We can go into the details of those in a future council meeting if you would like, and go through each one of those. We have a list of those compiled and can show you that a request from the department heads. But the mayor's budget does not include any new full-time employees in the utility funds. So. Anything else? All right, Derek, go. I'm going to quickly introduce this, and then Chief Citizen is going to come up and talk a little bit more. But literally, I believe it's the week of the mayor's budget presentation, we had the resignation of our assistant fire chief and fire marshal that had been at our city for 26 plus years. Mike Young found a new job with the state of Utah, and we wish him well, and he served the city real well. So in the 11th hour and 59th minute, we made a change in the mayor's budget. It is included, and our request, Chief Dillison is going to go into detail there. Our request that's in the upcoming budget is to split those two full-time positions, that one full-time position, into two. So go ahead, Chief.
All right, thanks. So as our city administrator talked about there, we weren't expecting this. So it kind of came as a surprise. And for him, it's a good opportunity for us. We hated to see him go because he served our community, both for us and for Perry City, very well. But just to be brief for time's sake here, I actually knew that if that was to ever take place, we would have a challenge on our hands. And the reason is because in the fire service, there's not many individuals who can perform the duties of both fire marshal and an operations capacity like the assistant chief role is. If you think about it and look around other cities, other departments, those kind of are two different pathways in the fire service for education, certifications, training, and expertise. We just were lucky as a city that we had individuals that could do both of those and did them well. And there's just not a lot of people out there who can do that. There's some, but there's just not many, because usually people pick one path or the other path and they don't really converge a whole lot. So I kind of had in mind, at some point in the future, if that was to ever happen, that we would be looking at probably splitting those positions like most departments have done for those reasons. And so there's a lot of difficulties really with a combined position anyways, because what happens is that individual really becomes overloaded they're trying to constantly balance between fire marshal duties and the assistant chief role of helping to manage the department and the organization. And so for those reasons on the individual, it becomes very demanding to try and balance those constantly. And you know, he did that well, but he struggled, you know, with time and those kind of things. And what we've seen is looking at the future and what's happening within our city and then within Perry, really, you know, the demand for those services for the fire marshal side of things has increased with all the development coming in, the scope of the projects that are technical and difficult to work through on the code.
Chief, would you mind
side?
going through what the fire marshal does? I think the public at large, in fact, everybody, I didn't even know what a fire marshal did and how extensive that job is, because I think fire marshal, fire chief, it all sounds like it's all part of the fire department, but I don't know, until I was here, I didn't know that it entailed a whole lot of other stuff that had nothing to do with fire service.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
the wrong way to say it, but nothing to do with firefighting. That's what I should say.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and I'm glad you pointed that out because, you know, I'm in it all the time, so I don't really think of that, and that's so true. So I've done both roles, and so I can speak to both of those roles. But the fire marshal really is more about prevention, managing prevention programs, managing public education, code enforcement, applying all of the standards that are either state law or adopted through the city, the aspects for fire related fire prevention, fire code, building code issues. They work hand in hand with our building official. It starts at day one when site plans come in and they look at a site plan and say, do we have enough water for this project? Where do the fire hydrants go? Do we have access? So they're heavily involved in our development aspect of things from the very beginning all the way through certificate of occupancy, when they sign off and say, yeah, this building is safe for the public or for operations that are going to happen. I always taught new deputy fire marshals and inspectors when I was a fire marshal that, you know, that there's two primary goals of being a fire marshal, which is keeping the public safe, but keeping firefighters and responders safe, our law enforcement as well, because as we respond into those buildings, if somebody's not helping to protect and make sure that those systems are working and the egress is correct and all those things, that's when bad things happen to our responders as well. And the public can't get out if those things aren't protected. So that's really kind of a quick synopsis. I would also add tons of inspections. They do our business license inspections annually. They do, you know, tours. They go to elementary schools and do education, all those kind of things.
Do they do investigations?
And they also do our fire investigations. So they're charged with determining the origin and cause of every fire, which we are required by law to investigate the origin and cause of every single fire, and then do a report on that. They work side by side with the detectives to when there is like an arson fire or you know, a criminal aspect of that. So it's a very complex job that requires a lot of education and training. And what I've seen in the past is train a deputy fire marshals 2 to 3 years, train a fire marshal to get to where they really know what they're doing is a lengthy process. You know, it's 5 years, 10 years before things really they have a good grasp of what's happening. So I appreciate that opportunity, Mayor. You know, from the assistant chief side, what we're really looking at is somebody that can help run fire incidents, who does management of personnel, who gets involved with, you know, issues of just day-to-day operations of the department and kind of keeping those things going. So you can kind of see there really are two different kind of pathways there. So as we look at the future, I don't know, did that answer the question, Mayor?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah? Too much? Okay. So, so to continue on here, just, you know, as we look at the future with all the growth and development coming into both our city and then Perry, who we serve by contract, we need to make sure that we are able to provide that service for those. So in looking at things and what would really be the best option for our city and for our department in the future, my recommendation is we do split those positions And we end up with an organizational chart that looks a little different than we have now. So we would have an assistant chief position to help manage the overall operations of the department. But then we'd have that fire marshal who would manage the fire prevention bureau or division of our department and all those projects that we've talked about. So that's what I took forward to the mayor and to Derek, and we talked about that. We did do interviews this week for the fire marshal portion of that, because we hadn't, we had a position there existing. We're just kind of changing structure a little bit with the assistant chief piece. And so we're just finalizing that out. But did I cover everything there, Derek? I'll turn it back over to you. So.
Okay, so perfect. So what we're requesting, essentially consent. I don't think city council has to make a motion on it. It's not a budget implication. We're really looking for the council's consent to post the assistant fire chief position right now. Both the two positions are split in the mayor's budget. Obviously, the mayor's budget's not final until the council takes action on that, obviously, later in June. But we did post for the fire marshal position. We did do the interviews for that. And we've got a good candidate that, that's going to do a good job with that job. But essentially, we're asking for permission to post the assistant chief position immediately and get that filled, and obviously subject to the council, being okay with that and approving it in the upcoming year's budget. So thoughts, questions, things we've left out, but how do you guys feel?
Will it affect financially the remaining year's budget?
Current year budget, we can make this work with the remaining 45 days that we have before the budget year is over. No, we're not going to have budget issue in the fire department with this change in the current fiscal year.
If I may, probably not gonna like hearing this one. I understand what you want to do with the restructure. I get it. Yeah, I know the difference between fire marshal. However, when you posted the job for fire marshal, my phone blew up, mainly because the salary that was added to that position being relatively high for the Brigham City for the state of Utah. I could not answer that, and I don't know that what the average salary is should be for a fire marshal. With that, I did some homework, and I found out, based on what you posted, it did seem a little high. But my information would be completely wrong. So I would ask a little homework back to say what, we've already moved on to that, but if we're going to hire the next position, is what does that look like in the state of Utah? And maybe even our surrounding Idaho whatsoever. So when we look at that salary, we want to be competitive. We also never want to be at the highest of the spectrum. There's always either here or here. Where are we going to put them? High end, low end, or in the middle?
Yeah, I think
just
Tom and I can both answer that. But I'll let Tom.
I'll take it. So about 2 months ago, we brought a new plan to the council. You guys seen that, with where the wages of the entire fire department were. Within that plan, these positions are posted. Before that plan was presented to council, we do an analysis, which we do of every single city position, of about 28 Utah cities, and where they pay. We get that information off of TechNet. It's a resource that HR managers and city managers use across the state of Utah to post those wages. On average, within the fire department, I can't tell you specifically where we're at, but overall in our city, our wages right now are just under 90% of the average within all cities. In those 28 Utah cities, we can get you what that assistant chief and the fire permit marshal position are. But I can tell you that the fire marshal position that was posted is obviously less than what Mr. Young was making because of that responsibility of the assistant chief.
So but nobody knows that but you or the fire chief. The public doesn't know that unless they look it up. So those are the questions I was fielding. It's like, well, I really don't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
That was just more homework knowledge for me.
I would just add to that we did also look at the fire marshal position again prior to posting specifically. And we did that comp study, so we have those
I can
numbers
send that comp study to
available.
the council, so yeah, or have it. Yep. Anyway, is there thoughts? I mean, we can do it for the assistant chief position as well. I can send that to you.
Thank you.
What's that? Is it Transparency Utah?
The TechNet,
Public employees?
yeah, I would just caution that,
It lags.
the transparency.utah.gov does have, public employee wages on it, but it's very misleading. If you do not know what you're looking at on there, you can get yourself confused in a real hurry. There's a lot of things that make up an employee's wage, including their benefits, and it was created to be transparent, and it has caused a lot of confusion. So,
Get you transparent.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, obviously we're running a little bit late. Is the council comfortable with us posting the assistant chief job and barring us sending out the, obviously this is, we post a position, it's open for minimum of 10 days by city policy. And that gives us time to get this out and receive any feedback from council. I think that's really what I'm requesting is permission to post the position. Obviously we can have future conversations before we hire.
Everybody okay?
All right, okay. Awesome. Sorry we're running late, Mayor.
That's okay. We are going.
No, Mayor, that's all we've got for our work session. Thanks for the time and effort from everybody and the information we were able to get this last hour here. And I'm going to time over to Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Our normal session or city council meeting starts at 6. We are running a little bit late, but let's take a 3 to 5 minute. You need to go use the restroom. And that'd be the time to do it. And then we'll start about 10 after. Well, you can. That was one of the things that we were gonna. We'll bring to them right now. Kind of put out one for the. It can be prioritized and raised up instead of. I think so because, well, like if you've got a big project instead of okay, we have that money. Yeah. Library. The answer on your.
do have a base, people can get the, but not a,
I got one.
they're charged for the
Yeah.
water.
Water you get. Again, been served from 0 to 7.
All right, we are all back the rostrum here, so we'll go ahead and get started with our Thursday, May 15th, 2025 City Council meeting. We just by way of information, we just had a work session from 5 until 6:05 on utility rates with the budget asks for the fiscal budget of 25-26 fiscal year. And now we'll move into our regular council meeting session. And we will start with, is Bishop here? There he is. We'll start with a thought, reading, or invocation, his choice, from Bishop Mike Arrington of the Brigham City 20th Ward. And then I've invited our city administrator, Derek Euler, to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. Bishop, if you'll come to the podium, thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful for the city that we live in, and we pray that Thou wilt watch over us and protect this community. We pray that Thou will help us to be united, to come together and find solutions to the issues that we are facing. Pray that Thou will strengthen those in our community that have needs. That Thou will watch over them and allow us to be a part of the solution. Father, we are grateful for our mayor, city councilmen, councilwomen, and ask that Thou will bless them with clarity of thought as they consider the issues of our community, and bless them with discernment. We pray for this in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bishop Arrington and Mr. Euler, for starting us off right.
I got to say one thing.
Yes, please.
Bishop Arrington and me went to accounting 2010 and 2020 classes together at USU, and I haven't seen him since then. So I hope he remembers me. Okay. Okay, sorry, thanks.
Hey,
That's the only thing he remembers from the class. Derek, I mean.
I think I got an A-.
All right, we have 2 items of consent and would appreciate a motion to approve the consent.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jensen. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Jeffries. Is there any question to those 2 items that need to be that the council would have? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Consent items pass. We will start now with a public hearing. Actually, we've got 2 of them, but we'll start. Our first one will be industrial pretreatment standards update. This is I want to say bi-yearly, if my memory serves me right. And this will be the second one.
We're actually doing the update today. It's in the packet.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so it's the update.
I'm presenting, Mayor.
Okay, okay. All right, so we'll turn the time over to Mr. Euler to present that, and then we'll, once he's done and you're finished with your questions, we'd appreciate a motion to, what am I trying to say? Open, thank you. Open a public hearing.
Okay, so we've actually discussed this item 2 different times in City Council meeting on this, and we've been kind of waiting on the state for final approval. So what we're doing tonight is just making adjustments to the levels allowed in order to facilitate our industrial customers being in compliance with state code. Like I said, the council has seen this before in 2 meetings, and it's obviously in your packet. It's very thick, this is really just the final step that we need to go through. And by the way, the second item is identical to this. On the second public hearing, to just come in compliance with new state code that just went into effect. Any questions, technical questions? Bryce and Tyler are here, but we have discussed this in previous meetings in full detail. So
This went to the state and now it's back to us?
yep,
No
Update.
changes?
no. They have not put their final signature on it yet, but legal counsel is comfortable with us moving forward with this tonight. So you're gonna have to step in for him.
Motion to open public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Jensen,
Second.
by Councilmember Troxel. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Good.
Oh, good.
All right, then our public hearing on the industrial pre-treatment standards update. And all those that have anything to say about that, that is time now and take 3 minutes. Is yours to.
Mayor, I move we close the public hearing.
Thank you. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for taking over for me for a second. We have a motion to close public hearing by Councilmember Jensen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Jeffries. All those in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed on the industrial pretreatment standards update. I believe now we can have an action to approve those.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the update to the public, industrial pretreatment standards, not the public, by, Councilmember Smith. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Hipp. This is a roll call?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This will be a roll call. We'll start with Councilmember Hipp and move to his right.
Dave's and I.
Matt's and I.
Ryan's aye.
Bobbins, aye.
Jeffries is an aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Our next will be a stormwater management plan, and we'll invite our public works.
I got both of them.
You got both of them?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so a lot of repeat, but this is our stormwater, the final changes that are required to come in compliance with state code. We did also discuss this one in a previous council meeting. And obviously there's a couple changes with state code that required us to change and update this policy and be in compliance with new state law. So any technical questions, obviously Tyler and Bryce are here for those, but no changes from last time we discussed this in council meeting.
Council have any questions? All right, we need a motion to open a public hearing on the stormwater management plan. So moved. We have a motion by Councilmember Hipp. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Jensen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, our public hearing is now open. Specific to the stormwater management plan, we invite all those that would like to make public comment on that to come to the podium. Council, seeing as though there isn't any comment, we'd enjoy a motion to close public hearing. So moved. That's a motion by Councilmember Jensen to close. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Hipp. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We can have an action on this now, which would be the approval of the stormwater management plan. We have a motion by Councilmember Smith to approve the stormwater management plan. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Troxel.
I stop.
That's okay. This will again be a roll call. This time we'll start with Councilmember Jeffries and move to his left.
Jeffries is an aye.
Bobbins and I.
Ryan's aye.
Jensen's and I.
Dave's an aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. I see a family here, and I think that I may have forgotten something on the agenda. Are you guys here for a citizenship award? Okay, I apologize. We didn't get that on the agenda, but I would like to acknowledge who is getting it. 2 of them. All right. What are their names? And which school is this from? Discovery. Okay, so Piper Grant from Discovery and from Discovery as well. I couldn't find those. That's where I ran to look because I figured that's where we were going with this, and I apologize. That is my fault for not being prepared tonight. But we want to have you guys come up, and if you'd like to take a picture with the mayor, that's not a big deal. To a lot of people, I know Councilmember Smith would turn that down every day. But if you guys would like to, I'll just meet you right here, and you guys, your parents can take a picture while my city administrator is looking for the certificates.
You can get him in here.
Can you say their names again? Piper Grant.
Yeah.
that.
So excited. Go up there, buddy. Oh, we got. Jameson, come here for a second, buddy. Camera's out.
Sorry.
They have to do to get this award here.
So that's a good question. Councilmember Jensen just asked what they have to do to get this award. And frankly, I'm not sure. This is nominated by the teachers at Discovery, and I do know that they nominate students that have shown good citizenship and service at the school.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes,
thank you.
congratulations.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, and you're welcome to leave, or you can stay. The most exciting part's coming up, I will say. And you know I'm lying if you've ever been to a city council meeting.
Thanks.
But you're more than welcome to stay. All right. We will move on to public comments, and this time is set aside for those in the public that would like to. Oh, I didn't move the podium back. Someone want to grab that for me? This time is set aside for comments from the public on anything you'd like, and we would ask you to come to the podium, state your name and where you live, and we'd love to hear from you for up to 3 minutes. And this is reserved for citizens, property holders, and high school students of Box Elder High School within Brigham City. The time is now yours if you'd like to make public comment.
Juliana Larson, Brigham City, Utah. I just would like to make a couple of comments in anticipation of the committee, council, working through the new budget that you're taking place with now. And I know you tell me every year that you do your very best, and I understand that. But at this point in time, when the mayor made a point at the last meeting of the council that we would be looking forward to at least a 15% increase in our taxes, the city's portion. But what he left off was how many more things are going to have the fees that are attached to those items increased at the same time we're increasing the taxes. Because a fee is actually another form of a tax that gets attached to whatever we're talking about. Then we get down to where we are dealing with the education board that is going to have a huge request to increase our property taxes. And then when you go down the line and you look at all of the other things that are contained in the body of that, we may only have a 15 to 17% in Brigham with the fees and the taxes. But by the time you roll it all together, I hope you realize that by my calculation, and I didn't do so well at math, but I can use a calculator, that by the time you roll all of those together, they're probably going to be close to at least 20% or larger. And in today's economy, I think that is going to really hit real hard. So if there are any things that, and one of the things I'm concerned about is the request for a great deal more money for the fleet fund. And they've tried to explain it to me, but I listened to it last year when we did the big fleet jump and the way we were going to pay for it. It kind of made a little sense, but now we're a year later and we're being told, no, we still need more vehicles because we've got still more to replace. But I get concerned. I mean, my poor little 2007 Avalon and I have been together a long time. And you just can't, it's inconceivable the amount of money you now have to pay for a vehicle. And if we really need these things, maybe we ought to do a little more planning for an R&R and figure out some way So we aren't looking at least a 20% tax increase in the general population. And I realize that even though we're building now, we're building a lot, and they tell me that what's built now we can't get the tax from for another year. But look back at what we've been building, and I question where's the revenue for that going? How are we spending our money, and are we spending it wisely? And you tell me every year you do, and I believe you try. But I just question where do we have to try to put in the plug? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council, unless the bishop would like to make a public comment, seeing as now there's no more public comment. We'll close our public comment period, and we'll invite our city administrator to give any updates or reports on what's been going on that you may not be aware of.
Thanks, Mayor. Just been a while since, I think it's been 2 months since I gave the council an update. So just a quick update on our pen stock replacement project. So probably been about a month right now that we actually shut the project down. We completed halfway, which was our plan this off season, and we completed that, and we've essentially, started closer to town. We've got the 2 new lines up halfway, and then they're connected to the old lines, and we've got obviously water flowing through both of those new lines. So that project is essentially done for this season, and then next year this fall, winter, we will start again. Obviously, it'll most likely be through the major winter months and try to complete the rest of that project this upcoming winter. But things went really well. Not a ton of problems other than we did have some issues with the Rocky Mountain Power's line that feeds Manaway. It is in real close proximity to construction, and it not marked very well in a lot of locations. So we had some power issues in Manaway. We're sorry about that for the residents up there, but they got it fixed within a relatively quick time. And then I believe Monday, I can't see Tyler's face, he's in the corner, but I believe Monday we are starting the pounding of our pylons and pillars for the bridge. So that project, the actual physical construction of the bridge, will be underway on Monday. It's an upcoming week. So we're excited. I'm sure the council's seen the big name slip in my mind. What pounds of pylons in sitting there in the middle of Forest Street. And obviously we're way excited to get that project underway. And obviously the public is frustrated at times. Mayor and I received comments like the road's closed, you aren't doing anything, what's going on, who are we paying? We had obviously some significant issues with getting the utility work done underneath that road. Those final connections are being kind of thrown up and taken care of this week, the end of this week, and party starts on Monday. So that's all I had. Any questions for me? Anything else?
That's still on target time-wise?
Which target are you talking about?
Okay, when do we anticipate it'll be done?
We're hoping 18 months. Okay. But, who knows? That's a long time and a lot of project. And
it was just the city and ground owners, local ground owners. I think it'd be easier to predict with that third party at Union Pacific in there, and making sure that their right of way and their infrastructure isn't going to be. It puts in more of a nuance to timeframes and approvals. So
yeah, we're really hoping that obviously the railroad has flaggers and that rail stays open the entire time this project goes. So it's obviously logistically it's a very interesting project. So we're hoping things go well and we stay on time. But if I tell you it's not going to be done for 2 years, don't be surprised. So
we can say so far still on budget.
Yep. We got a couple change orders with the utility. Or we reserved some money from prior year budgets to take care of some change orders, and still in a good place financially on the whole project.
Hey,
thanks.
Thank you, Eric. We'll go to our council member comments if you have any. I'll start with, and I hate to do it because I know he's been out of town the last couple of weeks, but Mr. Jeffries, do you have anything?
I have been traveling for the last
He has.
5 weeks.
He's been busy.
Back though.
Hey, Councilmember Troxel.
I wasn't able to attend the youth city council meeting discussed Monday, but I did talk to Linda, and the council is getting ready to help with the Arts on Main at the end of the month.
24th.
And that's another reason that I really saw in the youth city council when they did their presentation last month, where they offer to do service most of the time. They always act like they had a lot of fun times, but they're actually having fun serving the community. And I think that always needs to be said about our youth city council. I did have the great opportunity to attend our police banquet this past Tuesday. I'm always in awe of our police department and of our personnel and their families. Over the years, I've always looked up to our police department and these men, and it really hit me this year that every single one of them way younger than me, and and they have families, and they are just excellent community members and the highest of families that we want in our community, and they always have been, and they definitely deserve to be looked up to and honored the way that and are. So thank you for that invite. I appreciate being able to. I was able to bring my daughter, and he came away with it just kind of, you can complain about different departments in the city or something like that, but then you really kind of sit with them and their families and really see how seriously and how great it is to be part of Brigham City and our great departments that we have here. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
I don't have anything. We're meeting on the 22nd, right?
Next Thursday, yeah, so just a work session.
Work session?
Yep.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Yep.
Just regular council time, but it's just going to be a work session.
That's all I have.
Councilmember Jensen.
I don't have anything this week.
Councilmember Hip.
Nothing.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate Mrs. Larson asking or bringing up the fleet fund. I noticed in the paper last week that there may be some confusion over what was presented, or the way it was stated, and then in the paper, which everyone will read. I would just like to say that our fleet fund is not defunct, as was stated in the paper, to explain the need for the tax increase within Brigham City in each of the departments as with the fleet. As we purchase vehicles for that department, out of that department's yearly budget is then collected a payment to repay over the life of that vehicle, a monthly payment to pay that back, so that when the life of that vehicle is over, they can then repurchase and rotate that fleet. The problem that we get into, that we found over the last 3 years, is the inflationary nature that we've experienced in the vehicle market. Not only inflation, but time frames to have those not utilities, but the vehicles and the apparatus is built. Of course, when you budget what you know, and you know what to budget by what you just purchased, because you figure that it'll be really close. There is a inflation built in. It was at 1%. We've increased it this year to 2% inflation. Try and cover that because of the way things are going. But it's hard. It's hard. We've had to purchase. We purchased 2 brand new fire apparatus. One we received, and one we're hoping to receive, I think, in another 2 years, if I remember the build time. But we got a significant discount, so we went ahead and purchased that. Not only in the fleet fund, those were inflated. The last time we bought a fire truck, if you remember, I know council does, but I'm just saying this just to make sure that everyone knows that the fleet fund is not defunct. But when a fire apparatus goes from $750,000 to $1.2 million next time you need to buy, and we're buying two of them because of build times, there's the budget that we've cooked in with the departments just doesn't cover that, even with the inflation rider that we got on there. We see that with garbage trucks. Garbage trucks have gone from about 150, wasn't it, Tyler, the last time we bought a garbage truck? We're going out now to bid, and they're like more like $350,000 to $400,000. And again, we budget with that payback rate in the fleet fund at what we purchased the last one at. And so we need to make that correction. And we have in ongoing, but we need to make up that difference that we're already going to be putting out. The same could be said with ambulances. I think ambulances have gone from like $75,000 to $125,000 on up to, I think now we're looking at $250,000 to $300,000.
They're just short of 4 now.
Just short of 4, and they keep rising. So I just want to make sure the public, I say that mostly for the public and council, of course. And please don't take my comments that there was any nefariousness or anything by the News and Journal. They're doing their best job. I think it could be construed that the fund was defunct, but I just wanted to make sure that we know that it is operational. We just had to make that correction that was unforeseen with the type of inflation that we've seen over the last 3 years in those categories. I appreciate Councilmember Troxel bringing up the police banquet, and I'd like to congratulate the chief and command staff and the department. It was a wonderful banquet. The last one we had was a little more off the cuff. It was a little more casual and fun. This time the chief wanted to reset and make sure it fell in Police Week, and it was a little more formal. One thing that I would like to mention to go along with last council, if you remember, we gave a mayor's award to Detective Knutson. This at the banquet, the state attorney general's office sent a representative who is over ICAC. ICAC stands for Internet Crimes Against Children. Do I got that right, Chief? To give an award for the exemplary performance of Detective Knutson with what has happened in Brigham City with the judge and in Tremont with the fire chief, and what that investigation turned up, and then subsequent charges going forward. What the captain from ICAC mentioned that I thought was outstanding is that because of Brigham City's participation in ICAC, and specifically he mentioned Detective Knutson, because of that, there have been several other municipalities. Before, we were the only member of ICAC on that task force, which makes up municipalities throughout the state. We were the only ones in Box Elder County, maybe Northern Utah, or just Box Elder County. Just Box Elder County. But since that investigation, because of specifically he mentioned Detective Knutson, because of his performance and his example, there have been several municipalities around us that have joined and sent a representative and become part of ICAC, and I just wanted to mention that, and again congratulate our detectives, specifically Detective Knutson, and praise Chief for the department that he's put together and raised the standard for the departments in our surrounding communities, and frankly throughout the state, at least in Northern Utah, where we pull employees from and they pull from us, and we compete against each other. I appreciate what he's done there in making us the example and the lead in Northern Utah for how police departments should be and how they're run. So thanks, Chief. We will.
He looks really good shape.
I will mention that there were some serious weird tan lines because the chief required everybody to shave, and so we were beardless. There were some mustaches, so there were some white beard shadows, I would say. It made it rather comical that way, but they still looked good. We'll move on to our action items, if that's okay. And our first action item is a consideration of a resolution authorizing Brigham City to enter into an interlocal agreement with Manaway City for the purpose of providing wastewater services. And we'll ask Mr. Euler to present. I will say that this is just the end product of what we already did. I think was it an MOU that we sent up there?
Yeah.
A few months ago. And so now we'll be codifying. Is that the right term?
I didn't go into the details with the MOU, so I'm going to go into the details of this agreement tonight. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time with council. So Brigham City entered into an agreement roughly 43 years ago to take care of the wastewater flows for the town of Manaway, and that agreement has expired, frankly, currently expired. So, interesting. I feel like I've been working on this new agreement for more than 5 years, frankly. That's been a very long process, a lot of meetings that staff and us have had with the town of Manaway and their employees and elected officials up there. And I do want to take a minute and thank Bryce and Tyler for their work on this. It's something that we've discussed ad nauseum, had a lot of back and forth, and we feel like what we're putting in front of the council tonight for approval is something that we're comfortable with. And by the way, it is very short term. Even though, you know, the previous agreement was for a very long period of time, the agreement that is in front of you is only a 5-year agreement. Obviously, there's a lot of things that change with development. The town of Manaway has more than doubled in the last 10 years, and we feel like a long-term agreement for wastewater would not be in the best interest of Brigham City as the town continues to grow, and obviously just as our environment and things within our wastewater plant change. So just a little bit of history in the previous agreement, and I'm going to kind of detail one of the significant differences between the previous agreement and the agreement that's in front of the council. So in the previous, and I'll call it the current, but its previous agreement, the town of Manaway residents paid 80% of what a Brigham resident paid monthly to Manaway, which was then submitted to Brigham City for payment each month. This agreement is asking the residents of Manaway to pay 100% of the exact same what a Brigham City resident pays each and every month. I don't know the details specifically of why that agreement was entered into previously, but we're asking the residents of Manaway to pay the exact same rates that a Brigham City resident pays. And maybe a little bit more color on that. Their flows essentially flow through a large portion of the distribution system, transmission system that's within Brigham City's corporate limits. You see in your packet and the map of where their interconnection to Brigham City's wastewater flow system is, and that flow has to essentially travel all the way through the corporate limits of Brigham City before it makes its way to the treatment plant. So with that specifically, they paid 80% of what a Brigham City resident paid, but also within that agreement, previous agreement, when we were required to do state mandated updates to our wastewater treatment facility, Manaway had to pay their share as part of that agreement. Since I've been here, I'm not 100% previous to my time here at the city. That was actually enacted once in the last 15 years. So it's been 4.5 years ago, Bryce, that we did about a $6-8 million upgrade. State regulations change on nitrogen, phosphorus. There could be the effluent leaving our plant. We had to do that upgrade, and we sent Manaway their share of that bill, and they paid it. What we're asking the council to change in this upcoming agreement is the implementation of a connection fee. So as Manaway continues to grow and build out, this agreement would ask a new resident of Manaway to pay Brigham City directly a fee for connection that's equivalent to our wastewater impact fee, whatever that is at the time. In exchange for that, if there's any plant upgrades, expansion that are needed within the wastewater treatment plant, that would be now 100% the responsibility of Brigham City Corporation. No disrespect to these numbers, but I will give you a little bit of color. So $6-8 million upgrade on the plant, Manaway paid $160,000 of that bill with this previous agreement. This new agreement, each resident, each new connection would be paying an impact fee similar to a Brigham City resident, and it's not an impact fee, it's a connection fee to Brigham City Corporation that's equivalent to the sewer-only impact fee that a Brigham City resident would pay. Any questions on that? Go ahead.
If it goes up or down, as Brigham City has with all this of what we're.
Yep, it'd mirror it. Same with the monthly rates. Brigham City raises its monthly rates for sewer. that automatically is passed on to Manaway, or but lowers vice versa. All of that would mirror what a Brigham City resident pays.
Do we take on any responsibility for maintenance?
Not in their, well, essentially the wastewater line coming down the canyon actually is in between the two corporate limits of the cities. They're responsible, and it's in the map in the packet, they're responsible all the way to that connection point, which is up by our electrical service center. So they're 100% responsible for the maintenance within their corporate limits and the line down the canyon to the corporate limits of Brigham City, and that won't change. And that's, we have a metering station right at that location. I'm going to talk about that metering station and another adjustment in this upcoming agreement. So any other questions on that? Okay. So, so as we have analyzed what the wastewater flows look like from Manaway, we have been made aware that there's a lot more infiltration of groundwater currently coming from Manaway than we see on average in Brigham City. And Manaway's aware of this. Manaway's working on this. And we are asking through this agreement to allow Manaway to continue to work on it essentially through December of 2026. So this agreement includes some overage fees. It's $2 per 1,000 gallons of overage. What we've done is we've essentially, through our engineer, have said, you know, on average through the state of Utah, this is the normal flow of a residential dwelling for wastewater, you know, over the course of a month. That number is actually about 360 gallons a month per resident. We're in this agreement, we're giving Manaway town a little bit of a buffer, but we're asking if they cross over that essentially 400 gallons a day per residential dwelling, that's overage would come into effect at $2,000 or $2 per 1,000 gallons of water. Right now, they're hovering. There's some of the months that they're hovering. They actually cross over that 400 threshold, and some of the months they're well below it. Obviously, we're seeing some of that with the irrigation times, that when irrigation waters are turned into the town of Manaway, we see those flows creep up, which says we're getting some infiltration water into their system. And obviously, they're cameraing their system. They're working on it. They're doing some projects internally to try to bring that down and limit those infiltration flows. And we actually do see a little bit in spring months sometimes, when just normal water tables are high or the reservoir's frankly high. So, but we're asking the council through this agreement to give them a little bit more time as they continue to work through that infiltration, and we're helping them a little bit with that along the way. So any questions on the overages? And then also included in this agreement that is not in a previous agreement is essentially a maximum capacity of flows. So what our engineers done is said, okay, here's the pipe size. This is the maximum amount of flow that the pipe size and coming down the canyon and coming into the corporate limits of Brigham City can handle. So this agreement does include that maximum capacity that is the current pipe size. So, you know, I don't foresee us having an issue with this, but as Manaway continue to grow, and I should say I don't foresee an issue with this in the next 5 years. I just don't think there's enough land to develop that would create a problem with that maximum capacity. But, and obviously in a short-term agreement, probably not a big deal, but we do have that maximum capacity of flow that would be allowed to come into our wastewater treatment system. I believe I haven't obviously covered every individual thing. Maybe just one quick thing. It's kind of interesting, you know, the ordinances and codes of Brigham City corporations in regards to wastewater, industrial pretreatment, don't apply outside of our corporate limits. Our code applies to the corporate limits of Brigham City. So Bryce and Jennifer, our wastewater staff, spend a lot of time with Manaway, helping them to come into compliance with, frankly, one of the items that you guys approved earlier in the meeting. So this agreement does require Manaway, gives them 180 days to come into compliance with any state updated mandated changes in regards to wastewater. And we've struggled a little bit in the past getting those code updates done within the corporate limits of Manaway that are enforceable for us to continue to accept their wastewater flows. So there are some teeth in here in regards to this, and it's something we're working on. with them as any changes come from the state in regards to wastewater and industrial pretreatment flow. So other than that, I think I've covered the highlights. If there's any other questions, I'm here. Tyler and Bryce are obviously here to help. Any questions
I
with
think
that?
what I would add, and I don't know if anybody else would add this, but from now until December 26th, you think it's not a very long time for them to, work on their system on the infiltration. But it's actually been, by the 26th of December, will actually be 2 years since they started on their system during the negotiations to get to this point. So that's not that they only have, 8 months to do it. This is the remaining 8 months of the 2 years from when we started and
Negotiations.
negotiations, and we had pointed out that they had a real problem with infiltrations. They've been working on it, doing the best they can so far. We pointed that out to them. I would mention, or at least Councilmember Smith pointed out to me in the contract that we have here in item number 3 in term. I don't know which chapter this is. Manway obligations under 7.8, under 8 damages. Under the term, this agreement shall be in effect for a period of 5. We need to add years in that sentence. Right now, it just says 5.
Good catch. I think that just included the motion.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I automatically assumed that he caught that. Yeah. No, I just wanted to make that. Yeah, that's all I had. Council, do you have any questions or need any more clarification before we make a motion? Before you make a motion?
Anything, I motion that we approve the resolution authorizing Brigham City to enter into an interlocal agreement with Manaway City for the purpose of providing wastewater services for the term of 5 years as stated in the contract.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Smith, a second by Councilmember Jensen, and this will be a roll call. And so we'll start with Councilmember Trox. We'll move to her right and swing around and then with Councilmember.
Robbins and I.
Jeffries is an aye. Dave's an aye.
That's an aye.
Ryan's aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Our last action item is a consideration of resolution authorizing and approving a capacity purchase agreement between Brigham City and UAMPS, approving a power generation and balance of plant agreement between UAMPS and Wheeler Machinery Company and related matters. Cooper is going to present.
Hey, over to this point with this project. We've got a lot of discussion over bringing generation to the city, and before you tonight, we're presenting a resolution allowing us to go ahead and proceed with a power purchase agreement with UAMPS to allow UAMPS to move forward to acquire financing for the project, and UAMPS to also engage in a contract with Wheeler to build the facility. Yes, at this point, we've covered a lot. Is there any questions I can answer for you concerning this?
I think one thing I'll quickly add is, obviously from our last presentation when we discussed this whole project in detail, the council, obviously, the air permit is something that, as we work towards, and we're currently working on, we got a contract that actually got some news last week about that air permit. It was very positive for the city, but air permit is something that we're concerned that we got to make sure we've got that air permit first. So this agreement essentially between UAMPS and Wheeler, that's not between UAMPS and Brigham City, essentially provides a carve out that if for some reason Brigham City Corporation is not able to obtain an air permit, is essentially a get out of jail free card. So the project would not move forward. And obviously that's a fatal flaw. So I did want to talk about that. Second thing is just, obviously, we talked about financing. This project would be through UAMPS, and our agreement specifically is with UAMPS with that in regards to that. The funding and the bonding itself are yet to be determined. So the council, even though you're approving a resolution agreeing to, work with UAMPS, the specifics of the funding you will still see in a future upcoming council meeting, and this everything that's associated with those actual numbers. So we're not essentially saying, hey, you're approving this today and boom, it's gone forever. We're doing it. You will get one more opportunity to look at the actual numbers before we say, hey, now we're really signing on the dotted line. So, anything to add on that, Tom or Tom?
No.
Okay.
Remind me what project is this? The one
The
up
one
on
that was
Peakers.
on the-
Yep, peaking
Okay.
plant.
So what does the air agreement entail?
We have to get an air permit from EPA, federal EPA, to have these peakers. They're obviously the emissions. They emit emissions, just like any combustion engine does. We have to have a federal permit approved through federal and state EPA for these to be located in the location that we're planning to. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, as you can say, it's been identified so far.
And it obviously, if we don't get an air permit, it's a fatal flaw. So you can't build them. So it's that's number one, and we're working through that. It could be probably another about 3.5, 4 months, probably before we'll know the final answer to that.
The air permit is moving forward very well. It is to the state right now. Through the first steps of the state, there's 3 progressions that it goes through the Department Division of Air Quality. The feedback we did get last week from clearing the first stage was very positive moving forward. So I anticipate we continue moving forward without any problems. Just a little clarification on that. Originally, when we started talking about this project, we're looking at a full build out of 10 units. And after looking at the air permit a little more, we quickly realized that 10 units is not practical for the air permit. So we pulled the air permit back to 6 units, is what the original build has always been intended to accommodate. We'll build the building for 6 units, ready for them to go in. We will install 3 units, and at a later date, we'll bring in the other 3 into where it's already prefab for. The air permit will address all that. It was advised to us by Stantec, who's the firm we're working with, that if we wanted to bring in 4 more, we consider location somewhere else within the city and make that more practical, which I don't disagree with him. I think that could benefit the city having full locations for generators.
Yeah, so pretty state tone, just, we had talked about trying to get that permitting for 10, which is, for multiple future years and build out. Once you got that air permit, you have that air permit. Even if, you've only got 3 units in, we realized that we're going to have some difficulties with that. So we moved it back to 6, which is the exact size of the building we're planning to build. And obviously the plan still only put those 3 units in initially. So, and yeah, like Tom said, if we, years go on, time goes on, it may be a good idea for the city to look at another location and not this specific location for future build out of a potentially more peak generation.
But then at that point, you'd have
Yep, air permit starts over, and
for that
location. Yep. A lot of things change. That's the point of trying to get the air permit for the full capacity right now. Is who knows what happens with air permitting, air quality as time moves on into the future. So,
and like Eric alluded to, the air permit that we do acquire currently, they do not have an expiration date. Once you have the permit, if it's in 15 or 20 years, we see it's time to put in the other 3 units. That air permit is still valid for all 6 units. So we don't, and that's the standards we would have to meet as today's standards. Nothing that would be introduced down the road that might make that more difficult to achieve.
how far out do we feel like those financial numbers from
Before we know the number?
Yeah, before we know those.
We know about where we're gonna be. It's gonna be right around $24 million.
And there's still some moving parts, interconnection to
Dominion,
Enbridge gas line. We're still working on that. We actually did some preliminary geotech surveying. We obviously don't have studies back, but building design can be affected by geotech. So there's it's still a little bit of a variable number. And obviously before we go to bond and actually get the bonding, everything lined up with that, all of those things have got to be tied down. Plus, there's going to be contingency. But I think the most important thing for the council to remember is their permit is in hand before we move forward. So that's what we're working on. So we got a few more months before we see that. So.
And Wheeler actually came to us and sharing that.
Yeah, go ahead.
We were actually looking at putting the project on an indefinite hold until we had the. But we were concerned with increased costs. As you know, the cost of the project in 2017, when it was originally considered, is a lot less money than what it is now. So in order to end or limit our exposure to increasing costs, we kind of were talking with Wheeler. Wheeler came back to us, their own free will and accord, offered a pretty, I consider generous offer in trying to help us through this situation with the air permit. They wanted to go ahead and start proceeding at their own risk and by their own choice and start the engineering of the facility, the building and building design, during long lead time and expensive items, and get all that tied up at their own risk and their expense. And if we do not acquire the air permit, all that liability and all that financial obligation is Wheeler's exposure, not ours. The requirement on our side for this that I feel is more than fair, and to me it doesn't seem like it's out of line, is we acquire the air permit, then we are committing to move forward with it. Which is our current intent at this point.
Yeah, if council approves this resolution tonight and we get the air permit, you are committing to move forward tonight. We don't necessarily
like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have an out, but you're going to get the specific details of, and obviously with bonding, you're subject to the market, right? Whatever the market says interest rate are when we sell the bonds, and look at that and the indicative rates associated with that. Yeah, the financial portion, you're obviously going to get multiple looks at. But Tom's right. At $24 million, there's some contingency built into that as well. That $24 million is right around where we're going to be. Remind me of the bond payment on that, Mr. Cotter. So it's about a $1.8 million bond payment over a 20-year period. So, obviously, as we discussed earlier in the work session, as we talk about doing a rate study coming for future budget years, and what our electrical rates look like, with that bond payment is absolutely going to be in there and be part of the conversation of future electrical rates for the city. So.
And one thing to keep in mind with that is a 20-year bond looking at. We had done this in 2017. We would be just about halfway done. By locking that in, we are creating some securities for citizens of Brigham City and being able to help curb the exposure we have to peaking pricing. And that is the main goal of this, is to bring that in-house and let us have some control over our own business.
That you're talking the market instead of going out to market and buying it. We control that.
Yeah, and that this first stage will be able to produce up to 7.5 megawatts power. We bring the whole thing online. We're able to produce up to 15 megawatts peaking power, which both numbers will have great impact on our peaking load.
I think that's the greatest lesson we learned the hard way. in 2015 and 2021. Market was so soft back then that when we looked at it in 2017, the hedging didn't make any financial sense because the market had been so soft for so long. Nobody would even consider what we ended up going through in 22, 23 in the summers. And so that was a good lesson to learn. We look forward, this may be more expensive, but we saw that jump in just, in 2 summers where we were looking at $1,000 kilowatt prices for like a week or a couple days at a time. And we're looking at a higher cost for the peaker price right now, but in in the next 20 years, that's a dang good hedge where we've already seen $1,000 megawatts. And if fossil powered electricity continues to decrease, that price is going to increase nationwide, and so it's a good hedge. That's probably one of the biggest lessons we've learned over the last 4 years.
Right now, with our electrical grid nationwide, as you guys have heard, the biggest exposure we have is transmission shortage and capacity even getting the power to us. So those costs to get the power just from our generation facilities, even though we do have wheeling agreements to reserve this capacity over the transmission lines, those wheeling agreements are going to increase. And there's other things that can play into that, just getting the power to us. So anything we can do to be proactive to help control those costs and keep things in-house will benefit the neighboring city and its residents.
You ready? We're ready for...
One more thing. If I was a council member, I'd want to ask this question. So I'm going to ask the question, then I'm going to answer it, and then it might spur some more questions. But
he has the best conversations with
So we move forward with this project tonight and have a $24 million bond payment for 20 years. What does that do to electrical rates to make that work over time? So there's my question. I asked my question. Now I'll answer it. See if there's any other questions that arise. But I think first of all, within our utility funds, we try to hover around about $2.5 to $3 million worth of capital projects a year. So that's a big number to just take out of existing capital projects. 1.8 million of that money would essentially have to go to, this bond payment. So staff will be recommending a rate increase, electrical rate increase, to help us with this bond payment. What would that look like? It's a hard number to get to, because when you're talking, I can't tell you right now, this is what that rate increase is going to look like because of the factors that are associated with you're essentially completely open to the market for what we are going to now say is, 70, 60, 70, sometimes 40, 30 strike price per megawatt hour on that peaking generation, which today we have zero control over. And really that 7.5 megawatts that we're talking about is where we're completely open to whatever the day ahead market is. But it is what it is. Sometimes, over the last 2 years, we've seen numbers that are literally $1,600 a megawatt hour. I've actually seen some even higher than that 2 Decembers ago. So that, the actual number that's associated with, hey, what's that rate increase looks like is subject to what we would have paid had we not had the peaking power generation and what that looks like over time. So it's, you're hedging gas associated with that. We're going to have gas contracts around this. Obviously, there'll probably be some employment changes with folks that are going to be required to help us run this internally. And so there's some variability within that I can't look at the city council and say, hey, we're going to have to do X number of rate increase to make this work over the next 20 years. But what I will tell you is if you look back, like the mayor just talked about, and I'm actually going to correct Tom Cooper's statement, we'd be halfway paid for. We would be all the way paid for with cash that we have lost essentially on wholesale power had we have built these in 2017. And I understand the analysis, but if you just look at what happened to cash and the reserve cash, essentially returned earnings in our electric, we've spent a lot more than $7 million. What's happened to us with wholesale power from 2017 till now, excluding PPAC. So just
You know, and I'm not suggesting that, just in case anyone listening thinks that.
And what are you looking at? Time frame as far as looking at financial finalizing?
Well, really, it's next 3 or 4 months kind of determine our air permit. We're working on, geotech like right now, and that potentially affects the design of the facility itself, the concrete, everything associated with what's underneath to hold these units up. They're big, they're heavy, and they have to be obviously engineered. So that geotech will help with the design of the facility itself. That's probably in the next 30 days. We'll get the geotech back, and then obviously engineers take a look at that, and they design the facility based on, what's under it. And then I think another variability right now we're working with is the interconnection with Enbridge, the actual gas line. And we do have a rough estimate. It's significantly more than what we thought, is just under $1 million, which seems crazy because it is literally right. I mean, it's 200 feet away. It's not even that. It might be 80 feet away from the location, but very expensive on that. So, and obviously that $24 million number's got a contingency in it, but, I could come back in the next 3 or 4 months and tell you, hey, it's 22 and a half, and I might come back and tell you it's 25 and a half, frankly. So big project, and there's some contingency there. And those numbers don't affect bond payments a whole bunch, but obviously we're working as quick as we can. So, I think maybe just to provide a little bit more color in the, obviously city council's got the discretion to say yay or nay tonight. So, this contract, the little side contract, I guess, that UAMPS and Wheeler entered into, really is a significant thing. If you look at inflation and what's going on with equipment like this and just electrical equipment in general, the parts and supplies that we order to keep Brigham City growing are only good for 60 days in the environment we're in. So as we looked at this with a, worst case scenario when we started the air permitting, 9 months to start to finish on an air permit, we realized as staff that 9 months worth of, hey, we're going through air permit, my cost is $3 or $4 million in the actual cost to get the generation equipment here. So we've got kind of a unique opportunity where Wheeler honestly is going out on a limb on their side to start the procurement of some of the equipment to go inside of this facility. And if some reason Brigham City Corporation doesn't get this air permit, we're not out anything other than, the costs associated with the air permitting that, we're paying for internally, and geotech and the analysis associated with that engineering. So, obviously we're conscious about budget. We're trying to lock that down. And in return, I've got a couple unknowns and some variables that I can't tell you, hey, this is exactly what X, Y, and Z are going to cost today. But we feel like that contingency that's built into that 24 should cover anything unforeseen. So, and maybe just one more comment so the council's aware. Just realize inflation from 2017 to 2025. When we talked about this project in 2017, we were a $7 million project. Exactly the same building and design in 2025 is a $24 million project. That's what I'm talking about with inflation. So.
Well, you'd mentioned it could be 22 and a half, so I like that number.
Put that in your motion.
That's right. That was 5 minutes ago.
It's funny. 5 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. A lot changed in 5 minutes.
you almost had a motion for this to go through. Your question that you answered yourself has now thrown me through confusion. I don't know. I've learned years ago that when you think you're getting the answer that you're going to get, shut up and happen. Because you almost fucked yourself out of this. So, you made it more confusing, made it more hard for me than
Are
5
we
minutes.
looking at a rate increase,
Yes.
I mean, before the end of the year,
No, this would be,
or through it, or
it-
next budget
It
cycle?
won't happen until completion.
this is, yeah, rate increase would not happen until completion of project. And let me back up real quick. I want to make sure,
You just answered yourself.
This-
You just
yeah.
answered it. I think we're good.
okay, I want to make sure that both the two previous times this has been discussed, staff has recommended to the council a rate increase to make the bond payment. And I want to make that perfectly clear that we have absolutely told the council, if we move forward with this, we are going to be recommending rate increases to make that payment. And so,
That's
yep.
when it's completed.
Yeah,
Project
but,
completed.
yeah, the bond payments won't be due until the
We are pulling
completion.
power off of it because it's through the
Okay.
power rates that we pull off of that.
Now, and let me also share with you, with the bond that we're pulling, we have the option to be able to put as much money as we want down, to help lower our bond amount. That's an option we want to look at. So it's not just a fixed, cost comes in at 24, 25 million. Right? We've got to do that if we feel we have X amount of dollars available through some other avenues. We can put that in
What-
our bond.
Remind me of the estimated, I know it's backed up from our calendar, but estimated completion, if everything fell into place,
It's 18 to 20 months from
about 20 months from now.
That's from that.
Yep.
2
Yeah.
years. That's 2 years.
just, yeah, year and a half to 2 years right there. And Wheeler is fully understanding that, we needed this 3 years ago. So they're trying what they can do, their power to keep the project moving forward as well.
Well, that would have been a good thing to add, sorry, Councilman Jeffrey.
You're good. I got you.
Okay,
power is important, and power that we control and we can use. To me, I'm convinced of that, so. Yeah, I make a motion that we approve the resolution authorizing and approving a capacity purchase agreement between Brigham City and UAMPS, approving a power generation and balance of plant agreement, Wheeler Machine Co. and related matters.
I have a motion by Councilmember Smith. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Councilmember Hip. This is a resolution, so it'll be a roll call. We'll start with Councilmember Hip and move to his right.
Dave's an aye.
Matt's and I.
Ryan is an aye.
Poppins and I.
Jefferson and I.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, Council.
We now need a motion to move into closed session to discuss
Purchase, sale, and release of real property.
purchase, sale, and release of real property.
I missed this. So move.
Second. Who so moves it? Jensen with the motion, Smith with the second. It'll be a roll call going in. Start with Hip and come again.
Dave's an aye.
Jensen's and I.
Ryan's aye.
Poppins, I.
Jefferson and I.
Thank you. Motion passes. We'll move into closed session.